Chris O'Connor here. Join our fabulous curmudgeonly community on Facebook at facebook.com/group/curmudgeonrock. Also look out for a Spotify playlist dedicated to this episode. Now, let's get started.
This is the Curmudgeon Rock Report, and this is your podcast made by rock geek iconoclastic outsiders for rock geek iconoclastic outsiders. For those of you who lament that rock music has gone the way of jazz and slipped into niche genre status, we are here to keep that flame alive by providing insight, analysis, recommendations, and honest takes, not hot takes. And hey, there's a good chance you'll learn some rock history you never knew before. Well, folks, it's that time of year again. The calendar year is about to come to an end, and yours truly, Curmudgeons, are here to give you each of our picks for the top 10 albums of 2023. To be perfectly honest, it hasn't been the best year when it comes to quality depth of albums. Not only for rock, but it's been a sluggish year for hip-hop, R&B and soul, and even EDM. I, for one, could just barely find 10 albums to whom I would give 4 out of 5 stars or higher. But the high end of the pile has some real quality, with my top pick of the year easily being one of the 5 best albums of the decade so far. Well, in my opinion. As our most loyal listeners know, the Parallel Universe segment of our show is where we give our reviews of new music. And I've been pretty down on plenty of Chris's recommendations this year, so there's bound to be some disagreement when we run down his picks of the year. And yes, he'll definitely disagree with some of mine. So, without further ado, get your pen and paper ready or whatever note-taking app you use on your smartphone, and welcome to the Curmudgeon Rock Report, as each of us will give you our picks for the top 10 albums of 2023.
Now, Arturo, top 10 lists are really a moment in time, and frankly, they don't really age well. But we don't care because this is our moment in time, and this is where we're at. At the very least, we'll leave everyone here with a lot of homework, right, Arturo?
Yeah, I mean, 10 of yours, 10 of mine, and I'm not going to mention names, but there's only, I believe, 2 albums that carry over between your list and mine.
Yeah, there's only 2 albums of crossover, which, is in some ways shocking. Given our relative latitudes in tastes and what we gravitate towards these days. But this will be interesting. I mean, there's a lot of public service to be had here. We here at the Curmudgeon Rock Report, we keep the flame of rock and roll alive, and we say that this is your podcast, and so this is an opportunity for us to be professors. Before we get into the lists, let's do a little bit of an exercise, Arturo. What would you pick as the worst album of 2023?
Yeah, my pick as the worst album was Rolling Stone's pick for the best album. Rolling Stone magazine has basically become nothing but a platform to promote mainstream celebrity culture, pop entertainment. That's all they are.
Yeah,
There's
much.
no edge. There's no edge to any of their musical choices or the tastes.
Yeah, they indulge in the cult of personality for sure.
Yeah, it's celebrity culture, pop entertainment now. And so my pick for worst album, just out of spite, is that album by SZA. She's the R&B singer. And that album actually came out in late of 2022.
Yeah,
but it made its big impact this year in 2023. I think she had 2 number-1 hit singles off that one album alone. She had Kill Bill and not quite number 1. Snooze got to number 2. But the album I'm talking about, it's called SOS. And the reason I don't like it is because it is just, it's just streamlined corporate radio, slick, smooth, faceless, shapeless, formless, non-distinctive, derivative R&B soul. I mean, the only thing interesting about her is that she dresses casual on stage. And, oh yeah, guess what? She's a Muslim. So what? Her music still sucks. And it's really boring. It's the lamest, blandest kind of R&B. And yeah, so I'm just going with that one.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you relative to blandness. I don't quite get it.
Yeah.
The thing with female African American R&B is there's really only one person that's allowed to be singular, and that's Beyonce.
The same thing goes for male African American R&B. There aren't that many. I mean,
yeah, I guess.
I'm talking about like the super mainstream.
Yeah, the super mainstream.
There's a lot of good R&B and soul music.
But there's only like one dude in the mainstream that even comes close to that, which is The Weeknd, and not really.
And he sucks my balls.
Yeah, seriously, I know, and he doesn't really necessarily count as R&B. He's just black.
He's a black guy doing indie rock flavored R&B, but I don't care. I don't care. What doesn't matter what ethnicity they are. They have one thing in common, and they just are just like I said, streamlined corporate radio, boring, flavorless, faceless pop music that. Honestly, I don't see the shelf life for it. I guess The Weeknd has one song that people love. That
right, and SZA doesn't seem. In 5 years, we won't be talking about SZA. The only other record, you're right. I mean, the only record that really gave me hope as far as mainstream R&B this year is the one from Amaray, who's African influenced lady from.
I heard her record. It didn't impress me either. It's better than SZA. But
it's quirky. It's a quirky record. So who knows? Maybe she's got a bright future. But that's a good pick. For mine, there were several directions that I could have gone in, but I'm going to pick. I am our resident King Gizzardologist. King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard is one of the more interesting bands, probably the most interesting band in the world. I mean, if you were to, if Negro Modelo was to bring back their campaign. Or Dos Equis. They'd be the most interesting band in the world. But sometimes that's a great thing, as in last year and as in one other instance, which we'll talk about in a bit. But once in a while, they spectacularly misfire. And it's just like, what the hell were they thinking? And so they did a record late in the year called The Silver Chord, which they professed it basically was, hey, let's have fun fucking around with like old school electronic instruments. and sound all weird and sci-fi and supposedly concept records that hooks on to another one they did earlier in the year. And they did interviews and they said they were influenced by Giorgio Moroder, which is like,
and the album sounds absolutely nothing like
Giorgio Moroder. And I'm like, do you guys know what the fuck you're talking about? You sound, it's one thing to be pretentious and pompous and have something behind it. But to be pretentious and pompous and like sound totally clueless is just that's a grave offense. And the album is just garbage. It's painfully, we're just noodling on electronic arguments. Arguments as it sucks. But electronic instruments just for the sake of doing it. It's kind of they've gotten kind of showy. I think that they've kind of gotten off on this idea that no one knows what they're coming out with next. And so it's kind of like, just for the fans, here's our next curveball. And it's too self-conscious. And
that's a good point.
It's too self-conscious, and it's just, it disappoints me because they've come out, in this 3 years that we've been doing the Curmudgeon Rock Report, they've come out with some fabulous records. But then for every 2 good records, they have one piece of garbage. And this is the most garbagey of the garbage of the 3 years that we've been doing this. And so it's I encourage everybody out there to listen to the Silver Chord once, just to marvel at how shitty it is.
I mean there are a couple of tracks, the hard thumping techno tracks, there are a couple of them in the second half, which kind of, for me, saved the record from being complete, utter shower of shit.
There's a couple, and like the beginning of the record actually has some decent stuff. I mean, there's decent beats on it, but there's songs, beats, yes, songs, no. I don't. It's just kind of, there's not.
Stop rapping.
Stop rapping.
The members of King Gizzard are wonderful musicians. hip hop is not their thing.
No.
There's an old saying, Mark Arm from Mudhoney, when he's taking a shit on prog rock, and not just prog rock, but just indulgent musicians, show-offy musicians who care more about showing off their technique than writing good songs. Mark Arm always says this: just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Chris here again. As 2023 comes to a close, we want to take a moment to remember the rock and roll pioneers and legends who passed away this past year. It's a soberingly long list, something that figures to continue as the legacy of the 20th century and its popular music fades away. Here now is a roll call. Jeff Beck, Van Conner, David Crosby, Tom Verlaine, Barrett Strong, Wayne Shorter, Gary Rossington, Harry Belafonte, Burt Bacharach, Gordon Lightfoot, Andy Rourke, Tina Turner, Astrid Gilberto, Jane Birkin, Tony Bennett, Randy Meisner, Sinead O'Connor, Robbie Robertson, Gary Young, Jimmy Buffett, Steve Harwell, Rudolph Isley, Denny Lane, and Shane McGowan. May their light shine on into eternity.
Yeah, it's disappointing, especially given that Preview, their other record, is on my list.
Yeah.
So speaking of which, let's get into those lists. Let's not waste time here.
Yes.
So top 10 records for each of us. I will go first, as I did last year. It's just I'm guessing this is going to be kind of funny that the responses and the retorts might actually be longer than my coverage, just because Art loves to hate on my lists.
To be fair, there are only 2 albums on your list that I think objectively just definitively suck. Only 2.
Okay, to be fair. Okay, I got you. And to be fair, there's only 1 on your list that sucks. So hey, so we're okay. So anyway, let's get going. Number 10, Boygenius, the record. Yes, this is one of the more overhyped records of the year, but it's got its redeeming qualities because all three of these ladies, Julianne Baker, Phoebe Bridgers, and especially Lucy Dacus, have a lot to say. They have a talent and they have a style, this sort of confessional pop rock from ladies in their 20s. Clearly all influenced by Joni Mitchell and Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift, it's kind of interesting. She was Times Person of the Year, which was a good call because there's the cultural influence, the musical influence, the cultural influence is enormous. And I think that she's been influential on all 3 of these ladies. So this is on here as kind of a honorarium. There's 3 great songs all in a row, $20, Emily, I'm Sorry, and True Blue. Especially True Blue. And I'm putting this on here because, one, I do acknowledge that there's a lot of talent and, there's a lot of stuff, there's it's one of these, there's a lot of palpable emotion on this record and some pretty harmonies. And then you do have those 3 great songs. But anytime I get a chance to talk up Lucy Dacus, I'll take it. I think that Lucy Dacus, her contributions on this record are stellar, especially True Blue. The lyric on that is marvelous. And she's a difference maker. She's one of those. The reason that the other songs are as good as they are probably is because she was involved as a collaborator.
She makes them listenable. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. In some ways. Yeah. She's a special talent. And the thing I learned about this record is that she's a strong singer.
She's by far the best singer. She's the best singer of the 3. She's the best lyricist of the 3. She's the best overall songwriter.
Yeah. I never saw her as, I saw her as having a distinct voice.
Yeah.
And that served the songs, but I never, in terms of the harmonies, it's her voice that's the standout. So she's definitely one of the few artists in her 20s whose next works I anticipate eagerly. So as a public service, I am putting Boygenius at number 10 on my list. Arturo?
Yeah, they are the most overhyped and overrated band of the year and the most overhyped album. On my personal list, I have it at number 19. But then again, I have a pretty mediocre view of this year.
Yeah, me too. There's a reason we're keeping it to 10 and not 20.
Exactly. So I have it at number 19. It's like I said, she makes this album work.
Dacus, you mean?
Julian Baker, I'm not a fan of her music. It's a little too whiny, mopey, continuously slow for my taste. But she ups her game for this record. At least she tries to actually play something that approximates rock music.
Yeah,
I still don't know what Phoebe Bridgers' talent is. It's definitely not as a lyricist because she's so incredibly, insufferably juvenile.
yeah,
Especially with some of the songs she has on this record, like "Letter to an Old Poet," which makes me gag.
yeah. She's not as juvenile as Olivia Rodrigo.
No, that's a former Disney starlet turned.
Yeah, but Olivia Rodrigo is at least interestingly, annoyingly immature. Whereas Phoebe Bridgers is more boring than that.
She has a whiny voice. I'm not a fan of her singing voice. I'm not a fan of her lyrics.
Who are we talking about, Rodrigo, or are we talking about Bridgers?
Phoebe Bridgers.
Okay,
Bridgers. Lucy Dacus is on this record, and she really is what makes it work. And this album makes me want to listen to her solo albums more, which I guess says something a lot for Lucy Dacus, but doesn't say much for the other ladies in this band.
Yeah. I was going to say that she's that much of a standout that the reason that she gets to number 10, she's basically not the only reason, but the main reason that it thrusts into the top 10. She's the difference maker.
All right, anyway, Chris, number 9.
Moving on, number 9, Wednesday with Rat Saw God. This is the best half a great record of the year. Half of it is they have this weird combination of styles that they mix: grunge, art, noise, and alt country, or kind of that noise rock, Sonic Youthy kind of noise.
In other
rock.
words, we love the 1990s.
We love the 1990s. So basically, very but the alt country, grunge, and art punk, and so. There's a little too much noise to make it a great record, but I put it at number 9 because the half record, which are tracks 4 through 8, are marvelous songs. It's like one great pop song after another, especially the song called Chosen to Deserve. The star of this record, she's the singer, Carly Hartzman, which, she's an interesting one because she plays messed up girl with a messed up past that she in a messed up way looks back at with fondness. And so, there's songs about sniffing glue and, seeing dead bodies at a crime scene and stuff like that. So it's some dark shit, but it just really, really works. It's just really strong rock songs with really strong melodies in the middle. And because you listen to the first third of the record, it's like, oh, geesh. And then all of a sudden, boom, it's like, wow. And then it ends with a wet fart. But the stuff that's great is great. And one thing to note, MJ Lenderman is a member of this band. And he, to kind of illustrate my point about how top 10 lists are a moment in time, the album from 2022 that I listened to the most in 2023 is Boat Songs by MJ and Lenderman, which last year was number 20 on my list. It would probably be number 2 on my list if I updated it. It's the one I listen to the most. It's probably my favorite record of the year, but I still wouldn't put it over that Sogo record that I know you hate, Art. So anyway, great half a record, and the half a record propels it to number 9 in a not so great / pretty good year. Arturo?
Yeah, this album is one of the 2 on your list that I think really suck. They have a great sound. I like the sound they're going for, but they really need a songwriter. There's not one single song that has a memorable riff, melody, hook, chorus, you name it. It's just like well played 1990s retro revival 1990s indie rock. And they need a songwriter. That's just my thing.
Yeah,
that's it.
They have a couple. I mean, Carly Hartzman and MJ Lenderman are really great songwriters when they focus. And like I said, when they focus, and when they're focused, they're as good as anybody in the country. That North Carolina rock scene is pretty fertile. But
good songwriting means melodies and choruses that you can remember and that you can go back to.
Chosen to Deserve is one of those. Chosen to Deserve is definitely one of those
riffs that are memorable.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. To me, this album doesn't have it.
Gotcha. So again, great half a record. But you don't agree with that. Number 8, Killer Mike Michaels. If you want to read the most embarrassing review of the last several years, Bob Guccione Jr., who's the interim editor-in-chief at Spin, or what's ever left of Spin, has this gushing old white guy review of like, hey, I don't listen to hip hop, but this is like the best hip hop record ever. But that's amusing. But anyway, he does belong on this list. Killer Mike is, he's an old head at this point. Hip hop is not quite dead, but it's also not quite alive yet. And so thank goodness for Killer Mike for making a record this exciting and interesting and refreshing here in 2023. It's kind of a throwback in the sense that, Killer Mike is from Atlanta, and he got his big break by being an associate with Outkast. And so the music on this record is a throwback to the organized wing, Goody Mob wing of the Dirty South, which is to say old soul, sort of old down home soul, those kinds of samples and those kinds of influences, think Donny Hathaway and like the real grinding soul. Obviously, what's his name? CeeLo Green makes an appearance. Andre 3000 makes an appearance on this record. And Mike is just, he's a member of Run the Jewels, which is probably that's the best hip hop group in the world at this point. That's him and LP. And their last record, RTJ4, was wonderful. But Mike is just, he's very honest. He was Bernie. I like to joke that he was Bernie Sanders' black guy. He went out there and campaigned for Bernie Sanders to get the black vote out for him. But there's just a lot of coverage on this record. There's reverence and sort of paying tribute to the junkies in his community. A lot of stuff about his mom, a lot of stuff about his past and some of the bad decisions that he made. There's a song about the abortion conundrum for young ladies. And so there's just a lot of evocative themes, and you combine that with the soul samples and all that. It was the best traditional hip hop record I heard all year. There's really traditional hip hop is kind of a dying breed. I mean, everybody's now trying to be like Drake or trying to be like, what's his name? The 6'10", etc. The guy that was on. It seems like half of the guys that are like the quote unquote groundbreakers are on trial for murder. That bothers me a little bit, but Killer Mike, he's an old head, and he's still coming up with new tricks. Arturo?
Yeah, I love Killer Mike. This album just doesn't quite get there for me. I like, in theory, I like the idea of the old soul samples and keeping it down south, the quote unquote going back to church kind of thing. But I think the gospel affectations are a little too much for me, and he's just complaining a little too much about people complaining about him. It's like, come on, Mike, get over it. You're bigger than that.
Yeah. I know, like, hating on his critics. It's like, dude, you're like 45 years old, at this point,
you're already a star. Come on.
you don't really need to hate on your critics anymore. Don't waste your energy there. I guess that's a valid criticism, but at least he's funny about it. And it makes me look forward to RTJ5, which is coming. Let's just put it this way. There's a song from RTJ4 that's actually the backing track to an Amazon commercial that was played during football games over the last few months. And so, they're getting licensing from Amazon. So they got to come up with some new products. So there's something to look forward to. 7, Laurel Meets the Obsolete, their album Datura. This is one of 2 parallel universe selections from Arturo to make my list. Amazingly, one of my selections made his list, which didn't make my list. So that's a little bit of a preview. Usually he hates on my stuff, something awful. But hey, the sun shines in a dog's ass every now and then. Yeah, but hey, one of his PU selections from this year is on his list, and I hate that album. So they're giving a preview. So there. So anyway, let's talk about Laurel Meets the Obsolete. This is a one-time neo-psychedelic band from Mexico that has gone avant pop. When you think about this record, which is a really strong and fun and nasty-ass record, think of Nirvana's Endless Nameless, which is the hidden track on Nevermind, as rendered with electronic instruments and reverb vocals. I mean, that's kind of what the effect is, with hints, by the way, of both Depeche Mode and Aphex Twin. There's some dance rock stuff going on here. One of the best songs of the year is on this record, Golpe Blanco. That's Spanish for bloodless coup. It's just a nasty ass dance rock track, and
Golpe Blanco means white hit, like a white punch.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I read somewhere that it stood for bloodless coup, or it's maybe not. Okay. Well, yeah. I know Blanco. Yeah, I know Blanco is white. So I guess don't trust everything you read on the internet, folks. But it's a really strong dance. It's almost it gets trancy. It's trippy and trancy, and that's half the record. I mean, they really. Frontwoman Lorena Quintanilla apparently over the last few years has really gotten into experimenting with electronic instruments and with ambient and with drum machines, and it shows, because their earlier stuff, neo psychedelic is probably a good descriptor. It used to be a lot more guitar heavy and a lot like weirder and in some ways even shoegazy, like My Bloody Valentine-ish in some respects, but they've really become a really strong EDM rock outfit, like I said, and Dave Grohl is clearly a drum influence, and so that's the exciting part. It's EDM is done by with Dave Grohl on drums is kind of the effect. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is on my top 10 list as well. And yeah, when they started out, they were absolutely a shoegazer band, but they were a good shoegazer band. There aren't that many retro.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a short list.
Yeah, but they're from Mexico City. This group is one of the better, or one of the best ones, or were one of the best ones. You can't call them shoegazer anymore.
No, not at all.
All shoegaze has been drawn out of them. They are now basically really aggressive art rock with strong tinges of grunge and industrial. You mentioned Nine Inch Nails and you mentioned Depeche Mode and Aphex Twin. I hear a little bit of Nine Inch Nails in this record as well.
That's true. Second half especially.
Yeah. So the second half is like the best half of the album.
Yeah.
So absolutely. This is a great record. It's one of the ones we definitely agree on. All right, next, number 6.
All right, number 6, King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, Petrodragonic Apocalypse. It's got a full ass like weird title that I didn't write down, and it doesn't matter. It's Petrodragonic Apocalypse. Yo, a speed metal concept album about climate change, destruction, witches, and Godzilla. Yo, dude. Yeah, it's this is definitely a stoner record of the highest order, but it kicks ass. I mean, the best record that they've done in the last 5 or 6 years is Infest the Rat's Nest, which was their first foray into speed metal, and it was more of a darker and more serious concept album about climate change and having to leave the planet because of it. But this one is just kind of goofy fun, and like literally it just it reimagines the Godzilla story with climate change replacing nuclear apocalypse as the and the radioactivity comes from a coven of witches here. So it's really goofy as hell. And as I said on the episode when I covered this in PU, if you're going to have a band called King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, once in a while you have to do albums about either gizzards, lizards, or wizards. and here they cover the lizard, and they cover it very, very well. And like I said, they could use some quality control, but when they hit it right, they really, really hit it right. So 2 years in a row, a King Gizzard record is making my list. Good stuff, Arturo.
Yeah, this album almost made it to my list. I have it at number 12. Mm-hmm. And it was number 12 or 13. No, I have it at number 12. And I like it. I really do like it. But what drops it down a notch for me, this is their second thrash metal record, and the only one you can compare it to really is their 2019 album, Infest the Rat's Nest. But what makes this album, although I like it, I do like it, why I put it a little inferior, and I deem it a little more as an inferior record, is because two things. One thing, what made Infest the Rat's Nest so great, it was thrash metal done King Gizzard style. Two things. Number one, when you think of thrash metal, think of the tight, really tight, airtight, no room for any kind of improvisation, rhythmic drumming. Whereas an Infest the Rat's Nest is kind of a loose swing to it. which is like
that's
very,
true.
very unthrash and done so intentionally. And the other thing is that on Infest a Rat's Nest, the guitars, even though they had those thrash sounding, aggro guitars, had some psychedelic overtones to them. You still had that garagey psych sheen to the guitar sound on that album. On this album, there's no psychedelic sheen to the guitars. The rhythms are a little too tight, and it's a little too typically thrash. It's no longer a King Gizzard style thrash album. It's just a thrash album, which is really done well. But I miss the distinctive Gizzard element that gave it its personality, which you had on Infest a Rat's Nest. Here,
that's true.
Not so much.
No, I think that's a valid criticism. That King Gizzard at its heart is really a garage, is really kind of a psychedelic garage band. If you were to ask them what they really were, that's what they are. But they're ones that have a musical sophistication enough and enough ambition, and they're goofy enough to try these types of things. Yeah, I mean, and you had a good point. I mean, this is basically a straightforward thrash metal record with Charlie Watts on drum. It's not Lars Ulrich double bass. That's for sure. And so it's that's a little strange, but still, I mean, I love some of the stuff. I mean, especially some of the songs about the witches are really, really fun. So yeah, definitely check it out. It's stoner rock of the highest order, and I think that most of you will like it. Number 5, Jamie Branch, and I think I'm getting most of this right. Fly or Die, or Die Fly or Die, World War III.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, and I think that's right. So Jamie Branch was a virtuosic jazz trumpeter who tragically died of a drug overdose in 2022, just as her and her collaborators and friends were about to finish this record. And so her friends and family did finish this record and put final touches on it, and they released it in 2023. There's justice in the world. This did get attention. It probably wouldn't have gotten attention if it hadn't been for Branch's demise, but it did, and rightfully so. It's a very, very good record. Very exciting. It's smart, rousing jazz, where the longer numbers build and engage instead of wander or noodle. And it's unself-serious enough to include a cheeky Meat Puppets cover. And so again, it's got a Brooklyn sensibility, but she actually, I think she went to school in Boston. She was in Baltimore for a while. I think she was in California for a while. So she's not a master's thesis kind of player, which, that kind of infects a lot of modern jazz, where it's more about the theory, and it's more about the, let's say something deep in 7 movements. I had one of those albums on my top 20 last year. Kamasi Washington, I guess, is kind of the top of that set now. But she's a lot looser, and she plays with. She's a little bit more adventurous. She plays with some rhythms, some African rhythms, some Latin rhythms, and even a little bit of, I guess you could call it almost bluegrassy kind of shit. It's a very adventurous record, and so I admire it. Who knows if I'll still be listening to it in 5 years, but I definitely admire it, and I definitely think it belongs on this list. Arturo?
Yeah, I think it's an okay record. I think for the most part, you have a lot of great parts, a great drum rhythm here, a great bass line here, some really catchy, interesting, and memorable horn parts here, but very few of those parts. Very few instances where you have those parts coalesce into a unifying whole, except for that one song in the middle of the album called Burning Gray, which is by far the best and the funkiest track. And the funkiest
I agree.
track.
I agree with that.
That's a great song.
But there's a lot of great soloing on the record too. She was a virtuosic player.
But I wish her solos had a better bedrock of more interesting instrumentation around her, instead of being spread out into like, okay, this song, the best part, this song has the great bass part, this song is the great drum part, this song. I wish it would have been a little more cohesive in order to make it, at least for me, connect with me more and be a little more memorable. And I think those are the weaknesses of the album.
I don't know.
Burning Gray is a great single. Check it out.
Yeah, this is one of those instances where the lack of cohesion makes it more interesting. Sometimes cohesion in jazz can be a bad thing. So I mean, I guess that's in for me, it's virtue. For you, it's vice. So,
Yeah.
moving on, number 4, the second album that Arturo and I have in common on our list, Laurel Canyon, and their self-titled record, Laurel Canyon. By far the most exciting rock record of 2023. Grunge is alive, and it's not alive in a reverent sense or a nostalgic sense. This is the booming dynamite straight from the heart grunge, and it really shares a lot with early Mudhoney and early Soundgarden as much as it does Nirvana. Although, yeah, definitely it owes a debt of gratitude to Nirvana's Nevermind. But probably
Bleach.
yeah, probably the best rock song of the year is "Madam Hit the Wire," which the lead part on the chorus is just fucking tastic. Just really, really just awesome stuff. And so these are college kids that are based in Philly and grew up in, I think, Montclair, New Jersey, I think it is.
Yeah.
And so, but they're all like 22, 21, but they listen to the right stuff growing up, but they capture it well. And they write, they're really already really strong writers, and they bash the fuck out. And so bright future for this group. I can see them breaking out here within the next few years. They're kind of they're a well-kept secret. There's not a whole lot of people outside of me and Arturo that you'll hear giving shout outs to this band this year, but wait till like 2026. They're going to be all over the place. Arturo?
I hope so. Rock needs that right now. Yeah, this album is also in my top 10. Basically, yeah, it's grunge reborn. And what I like about this band is that they definitely echo, sub pop, late 1980s, early 1990s rock, but they're not deliberately copying. They don't literally sound like Mudhoney. They don't literally sound like Soundgarden.
No, not at all.
Even though you hear echoes of that in their music. They have a unique way of songwriting too. I love the way the lead singer, he has his slurred vocals, intentionally slurred vocals, lend themselves to those twisting, bending melodies that they have that you normally don't categorize with grunge or identify with grunge.
No.
Even though these guys are pretty much a neo grunge band, they're essentially reinventing grunge on their own, and they're really doing a great job of it. And it's a pretty bold step, considering how even to this day there are still a few rock fans out there like, no, grunge sucks. Fuck those assholes.
Fuck those people. Yeah,
I mean, this band does it, but they do it well, and they put an original twist on it. And it's my favorite rock album of the year by far.
Definitely mine too. And you made an interesting point with how playful the lead singer is. It's almost like Pavement doing grunge.
Yeah.
In some respects, that kind of like wink kind of stuff going on. Number 3, JPEG Mafia and Danny Brown, Scaring the Hoes. This is the top hip hop record on my album, but calling it a hip hop record kind of doesn't do it justice. It's a wild ass record, wholly inappropriate, but fun as hell. It's just this mishmash of influences. It's an organized cacophony of all kinds of styles. I mean, JPEG Mafia is a hip hop producer. He's based in New York now, but he's been another one, kind of like Jamie Branch, has been all over the place, and he's picked up a lot of influences. And so there's some Oakland music in there. There's some booty music. There's drum and bass. There's straightforward New York reverent hip hop production there. There's like Detroit horrorcore, obviously, because he's got Danny Brown on there. And Danny Brown, he's not quite he's sobered up, so he's not quite the XXX genius, like fucked up genius that he was back in 2011, but he's still pretty damn great and still pretty damn funny. It's just a really entertaining, wild, like 30 something minutes of just adventure. And so I had to give it up for that. Obviously, is it, when you talk about songs, is it as strong as either Laurel Canyon or even Laurel? No, but it's exciting as hell, and that counts for a lot in an average year like 2023. Arturo?
Yeah, there's one track on this album that I really like. It's the single, and it's the title track. Scaring the Hose. I love the snapping beat. The beat. It's basically finger snapping, and they're creating a whole beat based on that. Really inventive, really innovative.
Yeah.
Aside from that, the rest of this album is just industrial noise, crap, hip hop. I just find it thoroughly unlistenable. Danny Brown comes up with a couple of good rhymes here and there. And I love Danny Brown too, but to me, this album I just find is pretty unlistenable.
Yeah, I like to beat the fentanyl tester too. That's a fun one. It's just some skipping, the hopping, a jumping, and with some drum and bass. So it's good stuff. So yeah, definitely check that out. And so the top two records, they're pretty unified. These are the two best country albums that I heard this year. And it's kind of weird, I don't necessarily gravitate towards, and it's not even alt country. It's not country tinged rock like Big Thief or anything like that. This is actual like country music as the way it was intended. And so for those to be my top two records, it kind of shows you how strong these records are. So let's cover in order. Number 2, Jason Isbell and the 400 unit, Weather Vanes. I've been a fanboy of Jason Isbell's for 20 years, going back to his work in the Drive-By Truckers. His alcoholism cost him that gig in the mid-aughts. And so he's become one of modern country rock's finest voices in the years since. The song that turned me on back then, it's still one of my favorite sets. If you ask me, the honest answer, my favorite set of lyrics of all time is from Outfit, which is a song off of Decoration Day by the Drive-By Truckers, which is just beautiful. Song, a father giving sage advice. My life didn't quite go as well, and so here's my sage advice for you not to fuck up like I did. It's very, very poignant, especially since I had a close relationship with my father. This record, stories full of tensions. It's you've got survival versus survivor's guilt. You've got lost hope versus found hope. You've got the simplicity of action versus the complexity of love, which is interesting considering that Isbell's wife is a member of the band. You've got fading love versus vivid memories. Extremely well-produced record, full body emotional treatment. It's kind of nothing too soft and nothing too hard. And it's a very strong, unified set. I've said these days, if a record is longer than 37 minutes, I probably won't like it. This is a rare exception. This is an hour long, but it's a very consistent record. It's very poetic, and it's just a lot. It's a lot of character studies of lost dreams and lost love and recovering hopes and things like that. So it's his best records in Southeastern. I don't think it's better in Southeastern, and that's kind of one of the stronger records of the entire 2000s, 2000 to now. But Weather Vanes is strong, and it definitely deserves its place high up on this list. Arturo?
Yeah, I mean, Jason Isbell is one of those guys who I like him. I like him as a person. I respect him, and thing with Isbell is that I kind of like everything about him but his music. His music isn't bad. It's not bad. Nothing wrong with Jason Isbell's music. I mean, I acknowledge that, he's a tuneful songwriter and he has some pretty good lyrics, but I just find his brand of country rock / folk rock to be pretty bland. I find it bland. I find it non-distinctive. I find it just kind of dull and drab. I much prefer the band he was in. I think his songs were edgier when he was surrounded by Patterson Hood and Chris Cooley, Drive-By Truckers.
Oh, I agree with that.
And his solo stuff since then just doesn't have that edge. It really doesn't. Everything I've heard, I haven't heard an album in its entirety, but I've heard several songs from each album because I'm trying to like the guy. I really want to get into the guy, and I'm listening. I was like, you know what? This is just dull. This is it's too much cookie cutter country rock. Too much, middle. It's not lightweight, but it is middle of the road. It's cookie cutter, middle of the road country rock that doesn't have anything that really grabs. It doesn't have an edge to it, like I said before. That's it.
Yeah, and the thing about Isbell, I mean, that's a fair point that he does have kind of a narrow range in terms of where he keeps his songs, but it works for me. I think that there's a pathos to it that I really, really like, and an honesty And that's what I'm saying. So long, honest songs are always the best songs, which we'll get into here in a bit. But yeah, his stuff. I mean, he was around for 2 or 3 DBT records, and that's still to this day his best stuff. Especially his couple of songs on Decoration Day. Those are just amazing. And so, but he's kind of chosen this narrow lane for himself. This kind of easy. It's almost like an easy listening country style, and he doesn't get a chance to rock out much, which is too bad. So my hope for him is that at some point he finds his way to rocking out, because strange but true, Dinosaur Jr. Had a anniversary show a couple of weeks back, and Isbell actually went up on the stage and joined him for a cover of Freebird, and where he got to really rock out on guitar. So he's got it in him. So that's one hope. That's not a criticism. That's just a hope for the future with Mr. Isbell. And so number one, I really believe that in 10 years, this is the only album from 2023 anybody will remember. Zach Bryan's self-titled record, Zach Bryan. Zach Bryan, yeah, this is my number one pick here. It's a bit off-brand for us at the Curmudgeon Rock Report because it's an album that has a number one hit on it from this year. And when I tell you that Zach Bryan is a ruggedly handsome veteran from rural Oklahoma, you're like, oh, fuck, he must be a bro country dude. And it's like, farthest thing from it. He owes as much to Springsteen as he does Merle Haggard. He's the most consistently great songwriter in the country right now. He followed, last year he did a triple record, which is a little unwieldy and it got kind of messy, called American Heartbreak. But within that, it's kind of like the 69 love songs of of country music, where a third of it was awesome. And showed that the guy had real potential, and so he's prolific. But when he focuses it down and drills it down and really edits himself, he's marvelous. And he's just one of these guys that has these lines that you just line after line that you can just chew on and go, ooh, that's good. Just quoting a few of them. You're the waves crashing down on the East Coast. Hey, driver, pull over. I'm in a fight with God. All the love I had worth giving has been spent on my soul. You only love me like you mean it when it's after dark. The thing about high hopes is you can't hold on too tight. Ain't ever been a holy roller, but I found God in your eyes. That last one is from probably one of the 2 or 3 best songs on the record, called Holy Roller. And then the number one hit on it actually is one of the better songs on the record. One of the things about these days is that the hit record is usually the most boring song on records these days. It's like, oh, this is the one that at least will get you on the radio and pay your bills. But it's really, really great. It's actually a duet with Casey Musgraves, who, she's, Arturo and I both cynically say, well, at least she's hot. I've never been a huge fan of her music, but it works here that, it's called I Remember Everything. And it makes the point that never forget and always remember are not the same thing. And so it's a duet about a relationship that was basically ruined by alcoholism, and where he's kind of remembering of like, oh, I remember the fondness of, I was struggling, but I remember the fondness of those days, where she's like, well, I remember those too, and it's not so fond. And so the lyrics kind of mirror each other, and it's a really, really neat trick. And the album ends with a little folk ditty called Oklahoman Sun, which is a really honest song. And it makes me admire the guy, because he says, even though I've sold my guns, I'm paraphrasing this, even though I've sold my guns, I'm still an Oklahoman son. And so it's kind of his way of saying I revere where I come from, even though I don't necessarily represent what it's become now. And so it's the opposite of Okie from Muskogee by Haggard. So I admire Zach Bryan to no end. I think that when we talk about monoculture, it's all women these days, Taylor Swift and Beyonce, right? And these are the household names that everybody knows, everybody loves, grandmothers love. Zach Bryan, among male artists right now, and he's only 27, he's the one that over the next 5 years has a chance to go monoculture and really be universally loved. If he can get a number one pop hit and be a country, CMA type superstar, playing music this honest and this beautiful, in a world that's dominated by Luke Bryan and Jason Aldean and all these other assholes, then he can break out. He can be like a universally loved star. And so I admire this guy to no end. I love this album. I have a feeling you might disagree with me, Arturo.
You know what? At least it isn't bro country.
Yeah.
At least it isn't. Oh, how would I describe it? Yes, this is how I would describe bro country. I'm proud of my freedom. I'm proud of my truck. I'm proud of my pride. That kind of stuff. That's pretty much bro country.
It's basically the lineage of Toby Keith.
I got my freedom. I got my truck. I got my dog. I got my beer. And I'm proud of my pride.
Yeah.
And I'm proud of my pride. Yeah. No, Zach Bryan definitely is not one of those guys. And my thing with Zach is that I respect him because he's not that. And but here's the thing though, even like outside of bro country, whatever I said about Jason Isbell applies here to Zach Bryan. I respect that he's a tuneful songwriter and that he's introspective and that he evokes emotion without being sentimental. And that's kind of a tough trick to do in country music. And he kind of pulls that off, so he's got that vulnerable side to him, yet, still manly, quote unquote.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he's just bland to me. It's just bland. It's, again, not lightweight, although Casey Musgraves is most definitely lightweight.
Yeah.
but he's still a bit middle of the road and edgeless for me. It doesn't.
I disagree.
It doesn't connect with grit for me.
No, I disagree. I think there's a lot of grit there. I think there's a lot of regret. There's a lot of
sure.
There's a lot of weariness. There's
it's nothing that other country writers haven't addressed and articulated in better ways.
Well, of course. Well, I mean, I don't know, but yeah, I mean, if you're talking about like Merle Haggard and you're talking about like Chris Christopherson, you're talking about like even some of those guys,
or Willie Nelson or Townes Van Zandt,
or some of the B guys from the 70s. Yeah, no, I get it, but I'm just saying, but he's in that lineage and he has a lot to say. If there's one criticism that you can have of Zach Bryan is that he's got a template that a lot of his songs follow,
just like Jason Isbell. They're like peas in a pod.
Yeah, but his template, he's very lyrical, and I mean that in the poetic sense, not like the Dylan sense. It's like he's got this sort of. He's almost like a lyrical poet, and it has this sort of cadence to it that he returns to. He breaks out of it a little bit. That's one of the things that sunk American Heartbreak, is that he relied on that template too much. But he starts to break out of it a little bit here. But it's one of these things of like, you can change up the theme slightly. I regret my alcoholism. I'm road weary. I'm in love. I'm no holy roller, but I found God in your eyes, and then he can have that kind of sweetness or whatever. And so you can replace the emotion, but it's kind of like, insert line here. So there is a little bit of a formula, but he starts to break out of it here. And so I have my hopes. I really do think the guy is a star, and he's organic in the sense that it was YouTube. He was still in the military when he started to break on YouTube. And so it was social media that built up his hopes. And I also admired the guy because he basically, he said, fuck Ticketmaster. And he did a live album, actually. I can't remember what it was called, but basically he said, we don't need no Ticketmaster around here. And so he's kind of doing it on his own terms.
So who sold the tickets for his show?
I don't know. Here's the thing. From what I remember, I think he kind of did it with his own management, and they set it up, and there might have been some company that did the servicing, but they were able to pull it off. Whereas, Pearl Jam 30 years ago, the internet was in its infancy. And
right.
So,
I get the feeling now with the technology and the dissemination of information, it's easier to circumvent Ticketmaster now than it was back in 1995.
Yeah, but
Pearl Jam were doing their bit.
Well, it is and it isn't. You either have to be diligent enough or good enough to go viral.
Yeah.
And by diligent enough, I mean, you be like a Lil Nas X where you just try everything and then something eventually sticks. But in Brian's case, he's just a natural born talent. And like I said, for one of his songs to be number one on the pop charts and the country charts these days is like, that's a neat trick. It shows that talent reigns when talent reigns.
On this episode, we gave you each of our choices for the top 10 albums of 2023. For the next episode, we will continue our groundbreaking series, The Second Golden Age of Rock. For this installment, we'll take you to the epochal and historically defining year of 1967. Yeah, it's known as the year of the summer of love, flower power, and all that hippie stuff. But it bears mentioning and seemingly endless analysis that it truly was a watershed year for music of all kinds. You had landmark albums by the Beatles, the Byrds, and Cream. Yes, Eric Clapton is a douchebag, but he still needs to be discussed in the context of historic rock music. You also had landmark singles by James Brown, the Rolling Stones, the Kinks, the Who, Buffalo Springfield, and a shitload of greats from the Motown and Stax record labels. And then there is the astounding run of debut albums that would help shape popular music for, arguably, the rest of the century. The Doors, Jimi Hendrix, the Velvet Underground, and Aretha Franklin. Debuting on Atlantic Records, that is. Join us next time as the Curmudgeon Rock Report brings you The Second Golden Age of Rock, 1967. Rock and Soul in Technicolor. All right, so here are my top 10 albums for the year 2023. Okay, number 10, Mudhoney with Plastic Eternity. The grunge icons came out with by far their best album in a decade and a half. I'd given up on this band, but this album finds Mudhoney in just balls to the wall, rockin' angry form. And Mudhoney are at their best. Make no mistake when Mark Arm is pissed the fuck off. Yep. And he is pissed off on this album. Lyrically, he just tackles every single right-wing totem pole you can go after. He goes into climate change. He goes into abortion. He goes into gun control. He goes into conspiracy theorizing numbnuts.
Yeah,
and of course,
capitalism.
Yeah, capitalism in general. He goes after that. Mudhoney, get political. Yes, they do. Eat your heart out, Eddie Vedder.
Yeah, no shit.
And what I like about this album is that it's just a fiercely angry record where musically they get a bit psychedelic, especially in the first half of the record.
Oh, yeah.
There's some Pink Floyd-y type songs that they have, especially track 2 or 3. But anyway, they really, really go into it. I mean, the second half is more Mudhoney-ish, if you want to say, than the first half. But like the first 2 tracks, Souvenir of My Trip and Almost Everything, that's where they show, these guys actually kind of like Pink Floyd. But anyway,
they actually have more range than we gave them credit for here in their late career.
They've always had. And what I like about it in the very end, in this apocalyptic album of the world going to shit, they end the album with a song called Little Dogs. What is the song about? It's about the joy of the joy and the love that you get from having little dogs as your pet. Because in the end, that's the only thing in life you have to look forward to. I can definitely not only sympathize, but empathize with that.
Absolutely. Me too. Me too. So, Mudhoney, this is Steve Turner is the star of this record. Frankly, I had this number 12 on my list. It didn't quite get into my top 10. And I covered this album in a parallel universe segment. So for one of my picks to make Arturo's list, that makes me proud. But yeah, Steve Turner just has some wacky ass and just awesome guitar stuff on this. And you're right. It surprised the hell out of me when I heard it. I was covering it because I figured, well, okay, Mudhoney out there must be something interesting. And lo and behold, it was getting attention. They hadn't done anything in years, like 8 years or something.
Right.
And lo and behold, it's pretty damn good. So Old Dogs still have a few new tricks up their sleeve. So strong stuff. Mark Arm is a legend for a reason. Steve Turner is a legend for a reason. And they show it off here for sure.
Yeah. Number 9. Okay, Acid Arab and their third album, appropriately titled Trois, French for number 3. Now, I don't believe in the term guilty pleasure. I don't think anybody should feel guilty for anything they like. But if you people out there or anyone else out there would like to ascribe the phrase guilty pleasure to anything that I would like, I guess you could ascribe guilty pleasure to this. I enjoy the hell out of this record. I know Chris hates it. I like it because I mean, basically they're these two DJs from Tunisia, and they get the indigenous folk dance music of their region and they marry it to really groovy, catchy EDM. I just think it's cool. I like it. It's danceable. It's catchy. It's hummable. You can groove to it. You can lay down and chill and relax to it. You can listen to it in the background while you're either working on the script for this podcast like I do, or while I'm jerking off. Doesn't matter. It serves many functions. I love this record. I'm unabashed about how fun it is. It's a fun record.
Yeah, I really did. I really didn't want the image of you jerking off to Acid Arab. That's disturbing. Anyway, Ass Arab. I hate this record, and that might be a little unfair, to be honest with you, because one, I've never been a huge fan of that Northern African or sort of that, West. I guess you can call it Western Mediterranean. Yeah. If you look at the whole region, I've never been a fan of that stuff. It's just it gets on my nerves. But it also harkens back to memories of hanging out trying to hang out in clubs in Astoria. Astoria is a very Greek/Mediterranean, and there's probably some Tunisian folks out there too. And these like hairy guys with the V-neck black t-shirts, and basically the cocaine was probably flowing in the bathrooms, and it's just like we did not fit in as a couple of 25-year-old nerds that didn't really know who we were. And so I do have an implicit bias because of that. It's confirmation bias. It just confirms that I hated that shit back then. And so I don't pretend that my criticism is entirely fair. The one good thing I can say about them is that they definitely are adherents or acolytes of Daft Punk, and they do capture the Daft Punk style, sort of the drum programming and rhythm style that Daft Punk had in their early work, like Homework. And so they do a pretty good job of that. But otherwise, nah, it just doesn't. It's nails on a chalkboard for me, and nah, I can't do it.
Number 8 for me is Jamila Woods and her album of this year called Water Made Us. She is a Chicago born and bred singer-songwriter, R&B soul artist. And I rate this album pretty high. Well, I mean, as high as I could get, number 8, still, whatever. Anyway, I rank it and I rate it well because it's just really tight, well-written, well-crafted R&B soul that resonates. Yes, I agree with your earlier review, Chris, from a few weeks ago. The spoken word pieces are a little too pretentious, but that pretentiousness doesn't go into the songs themselves. If you just take the spoken word out, the cheesy spoken word out, the songs really resonate with some heartfelt emotion and some real intelligence too. It's not dumb R&B either. And one of the things I like about her is that she is musically, I like her for what she is not.
Yeah.
with a lot of contemporary R&B soul artists of her generation, they have musical ADD. They cannot stick to one rhythm at a time, one melody at a time, one beat at a time. Jamila Woods finds her groove and sticks to the groove until it sticks with you. And that's what I like about it. And that's what I like about her. And I like this record.
Yeah, this record is growing on me, and that was an insightful comment that she does not have the musical ADD, and that she does have some fully formed songs and fully formed ideas. It's retro R&B, like retro soul, done very, very well and cleverly, and I think she has a future. I could see her becoming something of a star at some point because she's got the integrity to do it. I think that if she sticks to her guns, as she grows as an artist. I think that she can get there. Yeah, the spoken word stuff, I still that's what sinks the album. I mean, it didn't even make my top 20 because of that. It's like, that stuff, speaking of nails on a chalkboard, I hate that shit. And there's too much of that in R&B records, and it's been like that for years and years and years now. It's like this sort of we're hanging out, or we have soul Aquarian things to say from the the outer regions of our minds, and floating out in the floating marshmallow. And I'm just like, fuck you. I really don't like that stuff. So that still sticks with me. I said it a few weeks ago, and I'll say it now. No.
Number 7, my most surprising pick, Paul Simon. And his album, yes, that Paul Simon, and his album of this year, 7 Psalms. And it is what you imagine it is. It's 7 songs, but put together in one long suite. And it's really what it is. It's stripped down acoustic folk music with minimal accompaniments. You have a few drum brushes here, maybe a keyboard there, violin echoing in the background there. But it's Paul Simon doing some of his sparsest, darkest, most haunting music of his career. It's unlike anything he's ever done before. You would really have to go back to like pre-Sounds of Silence, when it's just Paul Simon and an acoustic guitar, to hear something similar to what he's doing now. But what makes this album resonate is how dark, and I don't want to say apocalyptic, but it comes pretty darn close to it, especially with a track like Trail of Volcanoes.
Yeah.
When he's writing about trails of dead bodies and carcasses on the road. I mean, Jesus, Paul, what the hell?
Yeah.
Paul Simon is not known for these kinds of lyrics.
No.
But he brings it here. It's very evocative. It's haunting, and it really grows on you the more and more you listen to it. It's one of the most unique albums of the man's career, and it's a true late career standout. I really like it a lot.
Yeah, this album's growing on me too. I mean, I'll admit I originally had an aversion to it and avoided it for a while, because the idea of Paul Simon in his 80s doing a kind of a conceptual folk thing and evoking the Psalms, it just really wasn't that appealing. It's like, go away, Paul. Nobody cares. But you listen to it, and 7 Psalms is a really intelligent title for it, because it kind of does mirror the spirit of the Psalms. Yeah. You've got lament, you've got celebration, you've got spiritual devotion, you've got wisdom, and ultimately you do have meditation. And that's what he's going for. And it's the style of music, the sort of stripped down folk with interesting rhythms that you in your mind when you read the Psalms from the Bible. The kind of musical accompaniment that you might imagine would work for some of those. Maybe not some of the longer ones, but like some of the shorter Psalms, you would think that this kind of musical style might work for those. And so that's very, very smart on his part. And, I mean, obviously, we should expect Paul Simon's going to do smart music. He's been doing it since 1963, 64. So it's pretty good. It's going to grow on me. He should have just done it as a 7-track album. I don't necessarily see, why doing it as a suite or as a 33-minute long track. I mean, unless it's meant to be performed live that way. I mean, unless he's got a one-man show in mind. And if he wanted to do the box set, he could always do 150 Psalms. He can cover that. There's 150 Psalms in the Bible, so he could cover the whole gamut. And he could do that. And so, he can go tour and do 150 2-minute long songs. So good stuff.
Well, get them together with King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. Maybe that'll be their project.
Yeah, I was going to say, that'll be like the wackiest record of all time, baby. Wow.
All right. My number 6 album is one we already spoke about. Laurel meets the obsolete Datura. So I won't say much. I won't say anything because I already spoke about it. Okay, go on. Number 5, The Men with New York City. Now, The Men are a Brooklyn, New York band. They've been around for a long time. When they started out in the late noughties, early teens, basically what they were is that they were just really noisy post-punk with strong shades of industrial and even slight hints of industrial metal. Then they segued into just groovy, barroom rock that's kind of like a hybrid of Tom Petty, The Replacements, and like early REM. Yes, I know they did go there. They went there. Then by the end of the decade and going into 2020, they went into like Birdsian pastoral folk rock, even without the jingle jangle, of course. Yeah. But on this album, they go back to rocking out. Basically, it's mid-70s New York City CBGB's raw, feral punk rock merged with late 1980s Seattle sub pop label raw, feral grunge. Grunge punk, punk grunge, whatever you want to call it, mash it up. That's what the men do on this record, and they do it great.
Yes, they do. This is the second most exciting rock record of 2023. It was weird.
Yeah,
I heard Laurel Canyon and New York City for the first time on the same day.
Yeah,
man, that was a good day. Yeah, I'm telling you, yeah, you're right. The men, they started off kind of sort of like this, and they rocked balls, and then they didn't. Now they're back again. They should keep rocking balls because that's what they do best. I was really impressed with this record, and you're right. There's a lot of chugga-lugga and boom, boom, boom going on here, and it's very, very, very CBGBs, and it's very, very, New York City is a perfect title for it because it comes out of all of that. Think of, they've got that grunge heaviness, but it really is just like Wire, Television, Ramones in some respects. And it's
very just, Ramones, more Ramones than Television for sure.
Yeah, and I'm saying, but it kind of gets back to that scene, and it kind of gets back to that, the sort of the bash out ethos of St. Mark's Place, right. The old St. Mark's Place, not the gentrified one. Right. Yeah, it was in the middle of being gentrified when Arturo and I lived there 25 years ago, unfortunately. But yeah, great record. I had it at number 13. On my list. I just thought that the records ahead of it resonated with me more. But yeah, charmingly, awesomely rock and balls kind of record.
Right. My number 4 album, Squirrel Flower, and their album Tomorrow's Fire. Ella Williams, a Boston-based singer-songwriter. This is an album what I would call, if Boygenius actually rocked, it would sound like this. Basically, she writes really affecting breakup songs, but with really intellectual insight. And musically, she's really aggressive, but yet tasteful with her aggression. With When a Plant is Dying, she channels Neil Young and Crazy Horse. And gives it kind of like renews it, and it's more invigorating than anything Neil Young has done in the last 20 years. She has a song there called Alley Light, which is it's basically country flavored rock, but it's a better country song than what most country artists do today. You have really sharp indie pop with Into Skate Park. It's just really chock full of great songs. Really well written, really well conceived, really well executed. It's a lot. I mean, it's a lot of what a lot of indie artists today are doing. That sensitive singer songwriter confessional stuff with a little bit of indie rock angst. But this is that, but pumped up on steroids, and that's what I like about it. Go drugs, go Squirrel Flower.
Yeah, I guess you can say go drugs, and I like your description, tasteful aggression. I can see it. This album doesn't really do it for me. I mean, I'm kind of lukewarm on it. It's a little too late 90s Palooza. I know we covered, what was it, last episode? We covered both this record and Blondshell, and they're kind of mining the same territory. This lady is a better songwriter than Blondshell. And I think this album's probably a little slightly better. I go back and forth between the two, but they're just kind of like, it's the Juliana Hatfield revival. And
but she rocks a little harder than Juliana Hatfield.
Yeah, and it's maybe the Liz Phair revival, I guess maybe is more fair. But it's just like I wasn't all that huge into that stuff back then. And so I guess I'm lukewarm on it only because it's not really totally my thing. And maybe to be fair, I've only given it a couple listens. Maybe if I spend time with it, your number one, for what it's worth, is one of those records that once I spend time with it, it'll grow on me. So if I give it a more of a fair chance, maybe it'll grow on me. But right now, I'm just sort of lukewarm on it, based on it's just kind of, I don't know, just there's a certain dullness to, hey, remember the late '90s for me.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That's how I feel about Rat Saw God. Anyway,
Mhm.
my number 3 album, Margot Silker, Valley of Heart's Delight. This is straight up country. Make no mistake. It's, I think, the best country album of the year. She's been classified in the media, in music media, as alt country, alternative country.
No, she ain't old. Ain't nothing old about her.
No. She's straight up country, and she has some doozies of some songs. She can be funny. She can be sad. She can be emotionally forthright. She can be insouciant. She can be direct. She can be pissed off. She can be whatever mood you want her to be, and she does it well. And she does it, yes, she does it within a traditional country framework, but she's eclectic in the different country stylings.
Yeah.
She does, like, Lucinda Williams, gut bucket barroom country. She does bluegrass. She does the more I don't want to say lightweight, but the more sensitive, light touched Dolly Parton style country.
Yeah.
She does it all. Yeah. Emmylou Harris as well. The lovelorn, heart dripping out of your pores kind of stuff that Emmylou did or does. Margot Silker does all of that really well. Standout tracks like I Remember Carolina, Beggar for Your Love, Keep It on a Burner, which sounds more like the band than anything else.
Yeah,
but it's still really good. And the very last track, All Tied Together, which is, I mean, if you can't feel any kind of emotional response to that, then your heart's made of stone. It's a great record. It's one of my favorites. It's easily my number 3 album of the year.
Yeah, for me, it comes in at number 11. I decided to go with Boygenius just because of, I think the Lucy Dacus thing definitely, it was more sort of a public service spirit that put that over it. But Silker, one word, authenticity. In spades, and she's from Northern California, and there is a very California vibe to some of the stuff. I mean, there's a little bit more of the band in Topanga Canyon than one would think on first listen. I like her, and she's married to an honest to goodness cowboy up there in the Pacific Northwest. It's just there's just really affecting stuff, relationships with family, sort of old romantic entanglements. So she's got one of the better road travelogue songs that's come out in the last 20 years on it. Just a lot of fun, where she really, in a jokingly, ironically meditative way, she goofs on Texas in a wonderful, wonderful way on that song. By repeating the same line like 8, 9 times. It's just it's just a lot of fun. So she's going to be a niche. I think she's content to kind of have this narrow lane and kind of have cult status. I don't see her growing beyond where she's at now. But there's going to be those of us who keep our ears close enough to the ground that will always admire her. She'll always have an audience. She'll always be able to, tour a little bit and make a few bucks, but a few bucks. But it's the authenticity. She is who she is, and there's the grand ambition is only in the songwriting and the singing. It's not. There's no star turns there, and so she's keeping it real. And keeping it real does not go wrong with Margot Silker.
Right. Absolutely. My number 2 album of the year, we already spoke about it, Laurel Canyon and their self-titled debut album. I won't say anything because, we already spoke about it. So this brings me to my number 1 album of 2023. It is Mitski with The Land is Inhospitable and So Are We. This album has gotten a lot of critical attention, and it's been on a lot of people's best of year-end lists. Here's my take on it. Mitski, when she first started out, honestly, I've never been a fan of her music at all up until this album. at all. When she started out, basically what she was this kind of, singer songwriter, indie folk with a little bit of indie rock every now and then, like plugging in the guitar and rocking out. But those instances of rocking out paled in comparison to the instances of her just over emoting and whining and moping about her broken heart all the freaking time in the most continuously slow possible way. She got out of that a little bit in 2022 when an album called Laurel Hell, which was atrocious. It's just this hybrid of basically electronica and Broadway musical.
Yep.
And it's just horrid to listen
garbage.
to.
Hot
It's
garbage.
really. It debuted at number 5 on the US album chart only because of her following that she amassed from the previous years. True to form, this new album, much, much better, only got as high as number 12.
Yeah, go figure.
Because of how bad the previous album was. But this album is really good. Musically, she kind of strips herself down to just basically roughly an amalgam of traditional country and folk music, but done Mitski style, meaning there are a lot of arrangements, a lot of string arrangements, and some orchestrations, but they're tastefully done in a craftsman-like style, meaning the string arrangements don't overwhelm, they don't suffocate and smother the music. They get it they're underneath the songs, they're not on top of the songs. And yes, okay, lyrically, Mitski is still mining the same terrain. My broken heart. Oh, my heart is broken. Oh, I'm so sad. But here's what makes it different. And what separates this from other Mitski albums. Brevity.
Yep.
Brevity. These are 11 songs. None of them reach the 4-minute mark. Okay?
And the album is 32 minutes long.
And the album is 32 minutes long. Mitski songs, just on their own, they're just full of just melodramatic, indulgent sentiment. They're so indulgent in their sentimentality, I want to say, and so melodramatic that a song that's 5 minutes long or more is a little too much to take in. It's just putting way too much sugar in your bowl, way too many calories in your ice cream, whatever apt comparison you want to make. But these songs are brief, they're in, they come, they're out. And that's what makes them last longer, ironically enough. That's what makes you remember them more. She's not hitting you over the head with her sentimentality. They are sentimental. They are sad. They're all these sad breakup, I'm brokenhearted kind of songs, but they don't linger too long. They come and they go. And that's what makes you remember them more. And that's what makes it just tasteful. It makes it just more tasteful. And there are some beautiful tracks on here. Buffalo Replaced is the closest she comes to like kind of an alternative rock sound. The other great songs, Heaven is beautiful, Bug Like an Angel is really good. She has some really nice country tracks that are very reminiscent, oddly enough, of Patsy Cline from way, way long ago. Songs like My Love All Mine, and there's another one there called The Deal, which is really good. It's just some really good stuff all around. She plays with tempo shifts and time signatures and I guess prog rockish multi-section songs, but they don't go more than 3.5 minutes like The Deal does, which is what I like about it. She keeps it, she's disciplined, which is what she's never been before. And hopefully this is the beginning of a new chapter in her career in which her music is actually listenable. But this album is very, very listenable. It's actually lovely. And it's really well rendered. She has a good team of musicians around her and a good producer to really hone her and tone her indulgent tendencies down. And it's why it's my favorite album of the year. And I think it's one of the top 5 albums of the decade so far.
Yeah, frankly, I'm shocked that Mitski comes in at number 1 ahead of Laurel Canyon, because your enthusiasm for Laurel Canyon was almost orgasmic when it first came out. So I really, for Mitski
to come ahead of Laurel Canyon must mean that really resonated with you. And I got to admit, it's starting to grow on me. I have, kind of like you, I had an aversion to Mitski, but here you get a Japanese American artsy fartsy that finds her 1974 John Lennon, and finds her country balladeer, and the heartbreak on this album is palpable. I mean, there's a real emotional depth, and I think it's the brevity that brings it out.
It's the brevity, right? If the songs
brevity,
were
the discipline,
if the songs were longer, she'd be like pile driving you over the head with it. She doesn't do that here.
Yeah, there's a fine line between poignant and insufferable, and she walks it really, really well. There's a poignancy and a depth to this record that's surprising. Again, I need to spend more time with it to kind of loop back around to a point that we made at the beginning of this episode, that top 10 lists are a moment in time. Where I am right now, it's Zach Bryan and Jason Isbell. Talk to me in a year. I have a feeling this Mitski record might not ascend to those heights, but it'll be pretty damn close. The more time you spend with a record like this, the more it grows on you. And that's starting to happen for me. So basically it's like your list is like 2 months ahead of mine or 3 months ahead of mine. Cause Margot Silker almost made my list too. So it's this was an interesting year. Not a lot of depth. There was a whole lot of pretty good. There was a whole lot of mediocre and a whole lot of lousy. But as our lists proved, there were some gems. 2023, not a lot of monoculture left, not a lot of shared experience, and there's not a lot of these albums that catch wildfire anymore. And if they do, like Arturo said, it's in that pop entertainment sort of going viral sense that here today, gone tomorrow, like literally here today, gone tomorrow. But some of these are going to last. Laurel Canyon's going to last. Mitski will probably last. For me, Zach Bryan will last. Even the Laurel Meets the Obsolete record is something that I may find myself coming back to. And we'll see. And, last year, again, MJ Lenderman was the one that kept coming back. And who knows, Mitski might be that album this year. But that's the beauty of top 10 lists. They're a public service, but they're a moment in time. And folks, we hope you enjoyed our moment in time here. Any final thoughts about these lists and any sort of overarching thoughts about 2023, Arturo?
Yes, Mitski had a genuine pop hit from this album.
Yes, she did.
Yes, the song My Love, Mine, All Mine went to number 26 on the US Billboard Hot 100. Okay. Yep. Number 8 in the UK singles chart. Believe it. Check that out. Yeah. And it went top 10 in a few other countries. Number 8 in Ireland, 3 in Indonesia, 19 in Australia, 17 Canada. Where else? UK indie number 1. That doesn't say anything. Number 4 in the Philippines. How about that? Oh,
yeah. Well, here's the beautiful thing about rock and roll, folks, is that our podcast is branded as being for you, the fellow rock geek iconoclast. And here are number 1 albums each have a top 10 hit. or a top of the charts hit.
Yeah,
or a big hit. Yeah,
basically the Mitski song got success on TikTok, and then from TikTok it went to the charts after that.
Yeah, but that's how it happens these days. Yeah. I mean, which is weird. I mean, like right now, Brenda Lee is the kind of the Christmas. She's kind of the she's in her 80s and she's like the chick of the moment, and I mean that colloquially. Because like her rocking around the Christmas tree is bigger than All I Want for Christmas Is You. Thank God, because I'm just so tired of Mariah Carey gets her $1 million every year from that, but I was getting tired of it. It just kind of shows you that this culture is so fleeting, and so very few things go monoculture and very few things last. But I have a feeling that Mitski and Zach Bryan may last. And so that's the beautiful thing about it. And so we go off brand, but not really.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool. And so with that said, folks, first off, happy holidays and happy new year. This is our last episode of 2023. So be sure to visit us and be part of the Mirth and Merriment on our Curmudgeon League community page on Facebook. Paul Margic continues to be a powerful contributor up there. Thank you, Paul. Visit us there at facebook.com/groups/Curmudgeon Rock. Arturo's due to hit us with 1997 next on his tour of greatest studio albums. Looking forward to that one because that was a great year. Otherwise, hit us up if you have any thoughts about these lists, or if you have a number one. Tell us what your number one record was at curmudgeonrock@gmail.com. And here is a public service, or an actual news announcement. We are going to fade away into the great unknown, or the great good night on Twitter or X, or whatever which you want to call it. It's just not sustainable morally anymore. I am a First Amendment absolutist, and so there is a need in America to have a platform for garbage. But we don't have to be a part of it. We don't have to endorse it. That's the beauty of the First Amendment. And so